Hello, everyone. Welcome to MFTF 2.6.0 release demo. Today's demo, we will follow the usual order of topics in traceability, modularity, maintainability, and customizability, followed by a demo of magentoCron by community contributors. So in this release, we have introduced a couple of highly anticipated features, like supporting deprecation syntax in Magento test in MFTF test entities, and also using credentials in MFTF tests running locally and in CI. There's also some other features and bug fix and community PRs are included. So let's get started. Traceability. As you may know, Codeception supports Dryruns, which will execute a cest file that display the step-by-step scenarios without really executing against a browser or database. So previously, MFTF has some custom actions are not fully compatible with Codeception Dryrun. In this release, it should now working. So we require like all MFTF built-in, all non-PHP built-in and Codeception built-in function to be accessible to acceptance tester. You will see the new format like calling create entity, update entity, and so on. So let's look at an example. So I prepared my project. So the generate folder should be clean. Oh, okay, let me just clean. Rebuild. Build this project. So I have a Dryrun test. You can see in this test, we did some create data. We also referencing the data and delete data. Let's generate this test. I want to show you the generated cest file. The generated cest file, you should see the new format like the object, the acceptance tester actor are calling all the non-built-in functions, like the create entity and retrieve entity fields. Let's do a dry run to show you how this can help you in your debugging. You specify the path name. So it runs very quickly. It didn't actually call any browser or database or create entity, but it does show you the step. You can see it says, I create entity, I retrieve entity. So for this, you can, if you have test issues, it will help you to understand the test and potentially help you to solve test failures. Modularity. The next feature is we added for MFTF generate and run command, we added an additional format. You can specify suite scoped test names in format like suitename colon test name. You can specify one or more, like the example show below. I'm also going to demo example. So I have four small tests defined in this file. I also have a suites file that the suites 1 contains test 1, test 2, and test 3, and suites 2 contains test 3. So I'm going to generate the test first so that you can see how we resolving the suites and tests. So you can specify test 1, for example, suites 1, test 1, and for example, suites 2, test 3. Even though test 3 is in both suites, if you specify a suite, so we should resolve it according to the suite specification. If you open up our generated folder, you can see that test 1 is indeed generated under suite 1, and test 3 is generated only for suites 2. This is previously differently. This is previously behaved differently. Previously, we will generate test 3 in all the suites. Maintainability, I think Alex going to demo the deprecation. So I will hand out to Alex.
Thank you.
How do I unshare?
You already unshared.
Okay, cool.
So, maintainability. In this scope, we introduced a new deprecated attribute to every Magento entity we have into test, action group, data, metadata, page, section, and section element. What this attribute means and why we created this attribute. I know that Łukasz worked on a lot of cleaning for Magento functional tests, and he faced an issue that some of the action groups pages should be removed from Magento code base at all because they are not the best entities. But in 2.3 we cannot just remove them. We should prove backward compatibility And what we decided with him that he will create a separate file which will collect all of the deprecated elements, deprecated attributes, deprecated entities, and he will put a comment into these action groups. But it will not actually allow every user to see which action group or entity is deprecated. He will not understand, he will not get this message when he generate test or execute test. So we basically added to every entity an attribute where you can specify a message why this entity is deprecated and what should be used instead of this entity. Let me show you an example how it works on some MFTF tests. I prepared some demo here. So here we have a test. I already called it deprecated devdocs test, but let's imagine a situation that we have this devdoc test, which I want to deprecate because it's for some reason difficult to maintain, refactor, and I want to remove this test in the next major release. So what I can do, I can specify a deprecated attribute here and write a message. I do suggest to write message, first of all, why you deprecate this test, something like this test is unstable and will be removed next release. And also, I do suggest everyone specify what other tests you have which will cover the same functionality. Something like, please use other better tests, something like that. How it will look like when you will generate all tests. So let's generate all tests. Here in CLI, when you generate tests, you will not see anything. We didn't put here any messages because we know that it will be a mess. We will have a lot of deprecated notices and it will be hard to find a message you are looking for. So we put it into file, into MFTF log file, not this one, this one. And here you can see all deprecation messages we have. So here is not only I just created, but here is my message. This test is unstable and will be removed next release. So if you deprecate something, you will be able to see this message in MFTF log file. You will not lose this information. Also, if we will try to execute this test, test devdocs test, you will see here deprecation notices in CLI, the same message I put into this attribute. So you will see that this test is will be deprecated and will be removed. Also, it works actually the same way for every other entity. When you specify it in data, let's say I have here already an example, like I have some deprecated message data and I've got a message which tells entity is deprecated, please use other entity. And I've got a demo test which uses this deprecated entity. Let me execute this test and show you how it looks like. I've got deprecated devdocs test. When you do a deprecation, oops, something went wrong. Okay, I removed this action. Sorry. You will see that this test has several deprecation notices. Like, first of all, it will show you that this test is deprecated. If it is, it will show you that this test is using deprecated page, deprecated section, data, entity, action, group. So basically, it will show you every single piece you use in your test, which is going to be removed. So you will be notified that you need to update your test. And also, it will show this not only in CLI, but also in a load report. So let me generate the load report. If we will go to our test, you will see here the same messages you saw in CLI. So you will see this yellow deprecated notices tag, and each deprecated entity you used will be shown here. So please, when you execute your test or write new tests, see if you have any usage of deprecated entity and try to avoid using them. Because eventually in Magento 2.4 release, we're gonna remove every single entity we deprecated in 2.3 release. I think this is it. Yeah, that's all about deprecation notices. And I'm glad, thank you very much actually to Łukasz, because he started cleaning up and we both faced this problem when we cannot deprecate an entity with some message everyone will see. We did it in a hacky way, but we will also clean this up and make it prettier. Everyone will see what we deprecated in 2.3. If you have any questions, you're welcome. I think no, so I'm giving the stage to someone else.
Let me continue. I think I have maybe one thing to add for deprecation. So I think you only need to use the deprecation syntax if you have a backward incompatible change you need to make. Otherwise, you can just go ahead to make the change. And you should frequently, if you have question regarding the change is what type of change is a major, minor, or patch. In the end of the slides, I added a reference page where you can find the document that has we define clearly what type of action is corresponding versioning change. We also go, I guess in the future, we will have a separate demo for deprecation process to give you guys more examples.
Yeah, we will have a meeting where we will describe what the process behind deprecation. So how we're gonna deprecate entities, how it will work, because obviously you don't want to deprecate every single entity for no reason. So that's another story.
Okay. Maintainability, the next feature we did in this release is we did an improvement for the MFTF static checks command. Now you can execute all or specific static checks. If you don't specify any argument, it will run all existing static checks. And if you specify a name, like in the second example, it will only run specific static checks.
Let me add to it. If someone do not know what is static MFTF static check, we trying to create some static check verifications for your tests. Currently, if I'm not mistaken, we have dependency check. What it does, this check verifies that in your module where you write your test, you're using only allowed entities from other modules. For example, if your module dependent on catalog module, you can use pages, sections, action groups for a catalog module. But if you will use anything from tax module and your module do not have in require section and composer.json file tax module, it will throw you a warning that, hey, you are not dependent on this module, and if this module will not be installed, your test will most likely be broken. So please do not use those entities. So we have this static check. Also, we created action group argument static check. About this static check, I believe you guys will talk more. And previously, what G mentioned, when we had a possibility to execute all of them, and we didn't have any chance to execute a single static check for your needs. In this feature, we made possible to execute only one static check for your tests.
Yes. Let me do an example.
So can I use that time to ask one question?
Go ahead.
Sure.
So currently, when static tests, when MFTF tests are not generated properly due to different issues like reference to non-existing action group and events like this, actually there is no Allure report generated on Magento 2 repository on GitHub. So what's the timeline when it comes to introducing static checks for Magento 2 repository to make it possible to see what's wrong with functional tests, that the reports were not generated, the tests were not run?
For static check, we don't have a specific timeline, but we think that core teams will work on cleaning up tests, make them properly, basically fix all dependencies issues, because right now we have some tests and entities which depend on each other from modules which didn't know about each other, but currently they do. We have this initiative where core teams will fix them. So I believe it should be done this year. I honestly don't know a timeline.
Actually, I think we recently have a bug fix actually for similar issues. We decided actually in generation time, we are not able to fully identify a non-existing entity. I think instead we throw a meaningful error at runtime. So there's a technical issue, I think, behind like why we cannot catch at generation time.
Actually, what I wondered about was just to run generate tests as a part of integration tests on Magento, and then the output, which is when it fails, just to return as an integration test fail. That was my idea for that, and that's why I'm asking, because if your solution needs more time, it's good to proceed with other solution. And and I see that Christopher Burton is mentioning that. So I'd love to get deeper in that later on community engineering Slack.
Yeah, we will follow up on this issue.
Yeah, so what Chris mentioned here in Slack chat, who is not able to see it, that they just released a feature where they surface error during MFTF test generation, and that his team is working right now with community engineering to make it easier to see those failures as soon as possible. So this is coming up.
Okay, that's fine.
That answers your question.
So let's go back to this demo. As you can, let me show you currently. So if you use -h for this command, you should see usage, and also it will, in the help section, you will see all existing static checks. Like this is the test dependency and also the action group arguments. Let me give you an example of running the test arguments, the action group arguments test. So the test finish with this is I'm attaching Magento in my instance. So there's currently 24 errors, 25 violations in there 24 files has violation. The details are generated under your bin folder. So you can see that inside specific files, which action group has unused arguments. So this will need to be cleaned up once we have the deprecation format fully supported. The next one is customizability. As you know, MFTF already support credentials in file storage and vault storage. Although currently there's some issue internal limitation that in CI build the vault implementation has some issue. So you can only run the file and vault storage using these two storage in local development. So that's why we introduced the additional AWS Secrets Manager solution. I'm going to talk three topics for this feature. So how you store a test credential in AWS Secrets Manager, and how to use AWS Secrets Manager in local test development, and how to use AWS Secrets Manager in CI/CD. We defined the secrets format earlier on when we introduced the vault. It's start with the product, and next is vendor. Then is your hierarchy path to your secrets. For AWS Secrets Manager, it has two main concepts. One is the secret name, the other is secret value. For secret names, you have to use the following format. For MFTF, your name should start with MFTF, and then slash your vendor name. Then after that, you can specify whatever path you want. Then it's your credential key. For the secrets value, there's two types. One is a plain text. The other is a key value pairs in JSON format. For plain text, you can just write the value in any string format. For key value pairs, though, the key has to match the last part of your path, like indicating in this page. Usually, generally there's two ways to save credential into the Secrets Manager. You can either use AWS Console or using the AWS CLI. So here I show two examples. The first one, when you use AWS Console, the format will always be a key value pair. And if you use the AWS CLI, you can specify either format. This the commands screenshot here is showing secrets I created for the demo. That's a plain text format. So how to use AWS Secrets Manager in local test development? We will require you to have an AWS account with Secret Manager service. Also, an IAM user with AWS Secrets Manager access permission. In your setup, you only need to configure AWS credentials following AWS default credential provider chain. We don't define the format, so you can read their official document. In general, you can either specify the credentials in environment variables or credential files or your profiles. In MFTF side, we have one environment variable that's required. It's the credential AWS Secrets Manager region. You need to set this value according to your AWS account region information. And also, this is to tell MFTF that you are going to use the Secrets Manager as one of your credentials. The second possible environment variable is credential AWS Secrets Manager profile. This is an optional parameter. You use it only when you want to override your system default. So I have a page that's the AWS configuration for credential page. So in my local, I have something like this set up. So this is the location is in my home directory, and with a credential file with the contents. This is basically means I have a default profile where I have AWS access key ID and AWS secrets access key defined. For demo purpose, I'm not going to show you my configuration, but you got the idea. So let's look at a test. So I have a simple test that will open the Magento backend page, and you will read secrets I previously saved for this demo, like in my slides. It will just try to verify the field is indeed the value that I expected. Also, because we allow you to use multiple credential storage. The order of precedence is like if you have a local file, like displayed here, then it will take the highest precedence. It will override, it will read from the files. And the next in line will be the vault storage, as it was developed earlier than the AWS one. And in my case, my .env file only contains the AWS Secrets Manager region configuration. And I disable my credential file in my local. So right now I'm going to read from the AWS. So let's just run this test directly. The text is passing. And if we look at the log, you can see we go to the Magento backend, and we are reading a value called in our test is the credential key. So usually when you use credentials, you are not going to really do a assertion on the value because that should be hidden. This is just for demo purpose. What you usually see is you are filled with a value, as you can see here, is the encrypted value. So the value is secured in the credential storage and only accessible to the application at runtime, and any log and display will not show the value. I'm setting up this test to show the value just for demo purpose. And you can see the value read back is cred's value. The next, we're going to talk about AWS Secrets Manager in CI/CD. In this setup, you will require an AWS account ID where the AWS Secrets Manager service is hosted. Also, the EC2 instance that your CI/CD build going to use need to assume AWS Secrets Manager service read access role. So you provision the EC2 to assume your read access role. And on top of that, we also have an environment variable called credential AWS account ID. These need to be exported in your build environment as an environment variable. And in the MFTF side, you only need to use the credential AWS Secrets Manager region. You should not use the profile. This is so that you will use the role for authentication. And I think internally the MTS team have this feature already pushed to production. So the build you should be able to write test and using credentials. Next, I'm going to hand over to Łukasz from the community. He contributed PRs and also features in this release.
Okay, so I will explain what problem I was facing. If I can use your screen, that would be easier,
Okay.
because
Okay.
I have two screen setup, so the presentation would be easier for me to use your screen.
Sure. Yeah.
And actually, the problem I was facing during work with cleanup of MFTF tests was the fact that some of the tests relied on the fact that the indexer happened on safe, or if on schedule, the indexer was run explicitly. As a result, we have 500 of such actions during functional tests, followed by cache flash, which completely removes the warmed out caches. So as a result, the time to run tests is very long, especially on local environment when you run it on single process. So I tried to explain current situation with graph when you have even two tests running simultaneously on the same Magento instance. That's one time by another. You have to warm up your caches. You have to face the fact that the caches were flashed. So that's the problem, and we can move to second slide. Yeah, so the solution was actually using crons and the cache mechanism that is out of the box in Magento. That when you change something, the indexers are marked to be refreshed for single stuff, and then it's just refreshed with new cron run. But sometimes the issue is like it's not so easy, because sometimes when you run crons too often, the following one, which tried to run before 60 seconds passed by, is just ignored. So as a result, it doesn't work the way that we expected. So if we have one very short test and another one that runs just after the first one, the second cron wouldn't be run. So we can move to another slide. I saw some workarounds in Magento, especially Enterprise Edition, when people just used JavaScript fetch to check how long it was between running two crons. And then, based on that calculation, they run new next cron just 60 seconds after previously run. So if previous test taken like 30 seconds, it waited only 30 seconds. But instead of making that kind of workaround, I decided to make that a part of Magento, actually, of MFTF actually. So I introduced magentoCron command that runs cron indexer, and then you can run all the crons, or you can run specific groups with argument. As a result, if we have a situation like described previously, that you have multiple crons running one after another, they wait for previous one to finish and then calculates the time that should be idle before running next cron. And to not exceed the timeout, it also extends the timeout to not run out of time. And that's actually the feature I introduced. And I hope that it will be useful to remove all that indexer reindex and all that cache flash in our functional tests, and as a result, reduce the time needed for run tests.
Okay. Thank you. I think Łukasz has been contribute actively in our community and did a lot of PRs and features. Thank you. So I guess this is the 2 PRs we included in this release. And my final slide is a reference document for MFTF test versioning policy and MFTF test deprecation process. Please feel free to referencing those documents and stay tuned for future trainings on the deprecation.
Yes.
Any questions or comments? If not, I think that's the end of this demo. Thank you everyone for attending. See you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Hello.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Great job. Thanks, guys.